If someone opened your Instagram right now, what would they see? I love the cat pictures. Your vacation looks great. Are those things who you are? Maybe. And if so, that's awesome. If you are an artist, is your art there? A picture of you playing saxophone, a painting you just finished? How many clicks does it take to get to some portfolio of your work? If you say you're an artist, I'm sure you won't be surprised by me saying, I want to see it. The importance of maintaining a strong archive of all of your work cannot be understated. And I mean all of it. Even that early, ugly stuff. Because like I've said before, that ugliness down the line will feel like authenticity. It's so important that I'm quickly going to restate it here. If you concern yourself too much with some unattainable standard of quality, you are psychologically paralyzing yourself. Throw it in the archive. It's so much better for you that your art exists at whatever level of good you're actually able to accomplish than it is that this one piece you're working on be perfect, for the sake of both you and for the art itself. I will tell you as many times as I can that what you think is ugly is not. And I'm not just blowing smoke here. I'm not trying to tell you, well, someone will think it's beautiful. No, it's those fingerprints intrinsic to human creation, the rough edges, that ultimately elevate that thing you've made. You know when you see a musician drop a deluxe version of an album or an anniversary re-release, and they include the draft voice memo versions of a track as a bonus? I love that shit. And fans eat it up. My favorite of these is from the Milk Carton Kids dropping an anniversary re-release of their first studio album, Prologue. Joey Ryan included a draft voice memo take of their hit song, Michigan. Does it sound anything like the final version of the song sounds like now? Absolutely not. It's even a little rhythmically choppy. It has that roughness to it, but it's hypnotic. You're listening to the songwriting process in real time. And like I said, we see fans of different artists eat this kind of thing up all the time. I think it's easy to mistake this feeling of being drawn to the rough draft of this piece of art as just, well, I'm a fan of the artist and now I get more content. But that completely overlooks the fact that we wouldn't have the polished version of the artist without that voice memo existing in the first place. Like, not to be too reductive, but the voice memo is the artist. You understand what I'm getting at? I feel strongly that what you're actually drawn to is the intrinsic value of the thing. If the kernel of truth that you're exposing through your art is vibrant and resonant enough, then the level of polish isn't as important. Sometimes, even if it's rough, you still just have a good fucking song. This also makes me think of the Mountain Goats, how some of John Darnielle's most resonant and enduring songs are the ones from over 30 years ago where he was solo, banging 4 chords out on his guitar, screaming into a boombox recording onto tape. All Hail West Texas is a killer album, and if you had 14 tunes like that in your pocket, you could sit down and record them in whatever format you want, whatever level of polish, because all that matters is that those songs are good. Quick recommendation, find the podcast I Only Listen to the Mountain Goats, and pull up the episode with John Green on the best ever death metal band in Denton. Might be a thing or two in there about what makes a good song. So all of that is sort of about trusting yourself to build this archive and not getting caught up in the weeds with self-critique before you get your body of work really started. But what's the real purpose of your oeuvre, the opus? A lot of my philosophy on life and artistry comes from Mammoth's Glengarry Glen Ross, and I'll have to really dive into just that text with you sometime. But there's this one simple line that always floats up for me. And it's not even the full line, but Shelley Levine is scolding Williamson, and he says, "A man is his job. A man is his job. You are not an artist without art." I know that sounds silly and reductive, but let's tackle it practically first. There's this talent booker I follow in Los Angeles. I won't get into who he is, but let's just say he's publicly critical of some of the musicians who submit to him. And it's harsh. I often think he's a bit jaded, but once he really hit the nail on the head for me. He made this post saying, if you send me your song and I go to your Instagram and I don't immediately see more of your music, why would I book you? And he wasn't talking about just wanting more examples of your work. It's about how you publicly identify yourself. If you aren't living and breathing being a musician, it's simply going to be hard to get somebody to book you. And I'm not talking about partaking in the short-form content machine. If I say I'm an artist, but there's no trace of my art anywhere, I must not care about it that much. I've met folks here and there who want to talk about art with me. They say they're an artist, and then I go to their socials, and I'm just like, well, I sure wish I could see some of what you're working on. And maybe that's harsh. But going back to that Mountain Goats podcast, one time John Darnielle said something along the lines of, if you say you're a songwriter, but you can't even write one song a month, then you're not a songwriter. That is perhaps harsh. I personally don't feel that cut and dry about it, but it really all boils back to this identity thing in terms of how you present yourself, your actual practice, being disciplined, and simply who you are. For me, being an artist is the most important part of my identity. Therefore, what I create is, in that way, who I am. What I produce says everything about me. That I want to sit in this chair and opine about creativity and artistic process tells you everything about who I am and what I value. That I overwhelmingly prefer the music that I write to be performed by me solo. That I prefer directing and adapting classic plays over contemporary ones. That I prefer writing sonnets to poetry unshackled from form. These things say everything about my value system. My body of work is who I am. It is the thing of me that will be left behind when I myself am gone. But I think the really fun part is how the work evolves over time. But there's always a through line, which is you. Real quick, think of a piece of Jackson Pollock's art. Immediately, it's the obvious thing, the abstract expressionist splatters of paint. But have you ever seen photos of his earlier sketches from the 30s? There's a lot more form to them. A lot of sketches of bulls with different shaped horns and contorted faces. Nothing like what we colloquially understand to be Pollock, but it's undeniably him. Another example you may know comes from Tolkien's Legendarium, how The Hobbit was this children's fantasy, the narrative of which ultimately became the series of events leading up to Frodo's journey in The Lord of the Rings, which was a much more sophisticated political fantasy narrative. I've talked to fantasy enthusiasts before who knock The Hobbit for its simplicity, but in the end, it's just one facet of a much more dense body of work. Same with Pollock's sketches against his later paintings. Same with one of my earlier folk songs from several years ago against one of my more recent symphonic compositions, or this essay against the novel I'm chipping away at. Tying it back to John Green, I remember him saying once something along the lines of, people have told me they like my videos but not my books, or they like my fiction but not my nonfiction, but it's all my writing. A man is his job. If my job in this context is being an artist, then I will live and die by my body of work. It's hard for me to spend time on things that aren't my artistic pursuits. I said last time that I really have to push myself to actually rest. I think that'll always be true. But I can tell you right now that one of the great prides of my life is that I have this opportunity to continually rediscover myself by diving back into those early recordings of mine. I can meet my younger self again and again through those first songs. I've spent years writing songs at this point. I'm better at it. I am a more polished songwriter. But years of songwriting have only taught me that a decent tune can get some polish on it, but it'll never compare to one of those really special, good fucking songs, no matter the quality of the recording. And more importantly, you won't even know that you've got one of those good songs on your hands until after you've thrown it into your portfolio. So get publishing.